Welcome to the Go To Charles podcast / video log. I'm Charles Lovejoy. You can find us available at gotocharles.com and anywhere BuzzFeed posts podcasts. We just entered iHeartRadio today with a couple of videos, and we're going to continue sending things there. Today I have James Christensen and William with me, and we're going to talk about child custody and our stories that have impacted our life. William, I've known for about 6 months. James, I've known since, we were kids, right?
I guess so, yeah.
Wow. So, yeah. So anyways, and I followed James's story for quite some time, and I figured it was very worth putting out there for people to be educated on, talking about kids and child custody. So, William, I'm going to turn it over to you as the first one, and you tell me your story.
Well, I'm glad you're putting me first, because if either of you feel like interrupting me and giving me a gasp at anything that I'm about to say, you can go right ahead, because I'm going to give a disclaimer right here that I was an idiot and didn't take very good care of myself through the whole entire process. That being said, I'm going to be as gentle with myself as I can when I tell this story.
You ended up winning, so.
Well, I mean, in the end, I wound up having a good relationship with my children, and they lived with me for quite some time, from the ages of 14 until they went on their own. But it was in the young years that it was really rough for me, and just the battle I had with my ex-wife. We weren't seeing eye to eye for lots of reasons. But to start it off, I graduated high school in 1985. I had a couple good years of music under my belt from 86 to 87. And then before I knew it, I was a dad in my young 20s. I was like 22 when my first son was conceived. And that was an interesting moment. I mean, I loved having the child. I thought I was what I thought love was with the woman that I was with, but obviously went into everything blind, everything. So we wound up having altogether 5 sons. We moved from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania to Bellevue, Washington in July of 1992. I met a real estate agent who was looking for someone who wanted to do construction on homes in exchange for rent, for being in the home. Like, it was good enough to be there, to live in, but we were just doing renovations. We had 5 kids together, just one, no twins, no extra multiple wives or anything like that, just 5 sons. And then by 1997, I get a lot of questions about that. Are you Mormon? Did you have sets of twins? And like, nope, just 5 sons in 7 years. And as I was having the children and getting older, and I began to realize that my ex-wife really loved being a mom, but not always. I never felt like we were very close together. Like, she loved being a mom, but I didn't feel like we were really in a relationship. Like, I was almost sort of like there to do my part. I know that sounds really dry and really cold, but that is really what it came down to. So when we decided in 1997 that we were going to get apart, we made an agreement, which James, just tell me at any time what mistakes I made, but here we go. We made a verbal agreement that lasted for 4 years, that each of us would have our kids for 3.5 days a week and try to make it as equal and fair as possible. At that moment, she and I had a house cleaning business. We did rock, paper, scissors to see who went first. And we divided up our cleaning accounts and explained to our cleaning accounts that we were not going to be together anymore, and that each of us was going to have the children half the week so the other person could work and do their thing. After 4 years of that, some things started going a little south for my ex-wife, and she was drinking. And in the beginning of our relationship, she had told me that her mom was alcoholic. If she had ever started to exhibit any signs of that I should step in and do something. And years later, when I did, it didn't work well for me. And we wound up going to court because she had a lawyer who basically explained to her, if you tell the court that William is being abusive and physically violent or whatnot, you'll be able to get the kids within a day. I didn't have representation. I was flabbergasted that, yes, we had gotten in the shouting matches and things like that, but, you know, that was just a way stretched story that to this day I still have a really difficult time looking back on. And yeah, it brings up a bit emotions. But anyway, we've wound up being in court, in family court, and what the judge decided was that I owed child support for 4 years of the time that we were, from the time we got apart until the time we went to court. So it was basically about $1,100 a month times 4 years. And I got hit with a bill for that much money. And my life has pretty much never been the same. It took a long time for me to get over that. And even during all that, I wound up having my kids. I wound up having them and still owing the state child support, which to this day I'm still paying a very small amount on and can't even get my passport to visit any outside the US unless I take care of this debt. Years later, when they were 14 and 15 years old, they wound up starting to live with me. It felt like they needed more of their father and more than just the mommy energy, or however you want to say that. Usually it seems like the courts feel like children more need their moms. But, you know, let's be honest, like we talked about before, Charles, you know, a law that is like a blanket law for everyone cannot really work for individual cases. And
Agreed.
I didn't get representation. And I really, it was a kind of a self-sabotaging situation that I allowed myself to go through. And like I said, when they were teenagers, they wound up living with me. We played music on stage live. We still have a relationship, obviously. They're all adults. But I just wound up going through hell and never really got the representation I needed. And I regret not taking care of it the way I should have. That's my story.
All right. And so we'll go into my story. I'm in the U.S. Navy. And basically, my ex-wife got on drugs. I had 3 kids. The first one was adopted. I actually adopted her. It was a one-night stand for my ex-wife. I towed her through the military for about 7 years. I was deployed. Obviously, there was times when I couldn't actually like be there for her, if you will. And we ended up in Corpus Christi, Texas, and every duty station, I went from Washington to California to Corpus Christi, Texas, and every duty station was a quote unquote new start. And anyways, and she got morbidly obese and then started doing drugs to get out of being obese. And then finally the military got involved and said, hey, your ex-wife is like on our radar for drug use and drug trafficking and stuff like that. She took my car in California and said she was going to go visit family in Washington, leaving me with the kids and no car. And 5 days later, I get a call from Chino police saying she's involved in an accident. She had been on an 8-ball for 5 days and fell asleep at the wheel and totaled the only family car we had. And she was literally only 5 hours away from the house. This is when I said, I get it. There's drugs involved. Search the car. She managed to hide the 8-ball from the cops. When she got to Washington, I put her on a plane. I drove to Chino. I hooked up the car to a tow dolly, and I took her to Chino Airport and said, go to Washington. I don't even care at this point. And she went to Washington, and was her first rehab. Her parents and siblings put her into rehab. Once she was in rehab, she wanted to come home. She loved me. She wanted to repair the family, et cetera, et cetera. only to come home and just repeat the cycle. And I know, William, you're familiar with the repeating the cycle thing. But there was a point where I was like, I'm done. It's it. That's it. I can't do anymore. And let's get a divorce. Well, she decided to leave and drive, or met a guy about 8 to 10 hours away. It was closer to 13 hours away, in North Texas, which was a blessing and a curse. Because I was still in the military. I had the kids. I was in base housing. I was able to support them. But she went to an abusive person in North Texas. And then she was pushing for the kids, pushing for the kids, pushing for the kids. Well, at that point, it ended up being I had a girlfriend at the time. It ended up being a 2-year dispute. I drug up all kinds of a 4x4 box of paperwork against her, her family, everything. Got a female attorney intentionally, so that when I went to court, I had all this documentation and I could present it. And the judge, after 9 hours of court, just went, Charles, you're ripped my heart out, said all the kids are going to go to mom. And hey, by the way, go buy them ice cream. That's what the judge said. And I did that. I bought ice cream, but that was a super stressful moment. Now, fast forward, it kind of worked out. She got the child support order for $500 a month, which is shit for kids. I mean, that was a blessing in and of itself. But 1 year later, she says, I can't take care of the kids. Come get them and take them to your house. And it was her drug use that made that happen. So 1 year later, I get them back and I raise them all the way through their teens. So I had a child support order. I had the kids and I had to figure it out. So, all right, James, I love the fact that you're shaking your head. So,
well, yeah, it's pretty kind of goes without saying how disgusting some of that stuff is. But
right,
my story is, I had a kid out of wedlock. Sadly, it was with a woman that I was friends with. I was dating. We messed around. We were kind of on and off, and we had a kid. We actually used to go to the same church. So her and her sisters and me and my friends were all in a close, kind of really tight-knit group. We were around each other a few days a week outside of work and stuff all the time. And we lived really close by. So we had a kid, and then there was a controversy in our church and a lot of people left. So the ones who were the faker believers, like the mother and her family, they said, oh, we're not going to let him see the kid unless it's a limited time or whatever. And then I started getting arguments with her about, I was there at the hospital when my child was born I went there after work and stayed there for 5, 6, 7 hours because the mother had a C-section. She was there for a week recovering, and my daughter was in an incubator. So anyway, I was there doing stuff like that. The first couple, throughout the pregnancy, I took a second job, gave her $500 a month so she'd have money. I got her a chair, the changing station, clothes. I was doing everything most guys want to do, being a provider and stuff like that. Then a few weeks after she was born, then we're arguing over my right to see her. And I said, well, this is going to get ugly if you keep doing this. She's like, oh, was that a threat? So she calls the cops because I said that. And really what I meant was I was doing some research for this group called Dads America, and they had a branch in Washington. Dads of Washington is Dads Against Discrimination. And I didn't want to tell her, hey, look, I'm planning on going to court if you don't let me see her anymore. And I just said, this is going to get ugly. And so she took it as a threat, called the cops. They recommended a restraining order. So we went to restraining order court. And then I was learning how to argue that stuff on my own. And then the judge was even empathizing. Well, can he see his kid for a little bit? She said, she actually destroyed her own credibility. She said, well, you know, if he wants to see his kid, he should keep up with his fiduciary duty to the kid. The judge goes, wait, are you saying he needs to pay you to see his own kid? She's like, oh, no, I didn't mean that.
Right.
And there was another time she said, in one of those, and we had 2 hearings. The judge said, I'm a criminal judge, go to family court, get a parenting plan, then come back. So he granted a temporary restraining order for another 2 weeks just in case. He goes, how can he see the kid? He goes, well, he can contact my coworker. And I'm smarter than that. I'm not going anywhere near anybody in her vicinity and he make it remotely look like I'm trying to talk to her, because her coworker sits at a desk right next to her. And I'm restrained from her, and she could just say, oh, he's third party contacting me through her. So I didn't even touch. And then we went back to court and he goes, well, did he get to see the kid? And she's like, well, he didn't call my coworker. So she's wanting a restraining order against me for me to get out of her life. Then she's complaining I didn't contact her coworker to communicate with her about the kid. So anyway, then there was another point. She said, well, he could see her for a couple hours, but that's it because she's breastfeeding. I said, Your Honor, look at my exhibit 22 or whatever. There's a picture of me bottle feeding her the other day. So I destroyed her credibility. And that's where I talk about, like, I do a lot of male advocacy stuff. And I talk about a picture's worth 1,000 words, because if I didn't have that picture, who are they going to believe? They're going to believe the breastfeeder,
Right.
as to whether she's breastfeeding or not. So anyway, so that just started the ball rolling, and I learned how to argue stuff. And then I went to court. They gave me 0 visitation. They said, you're doing a great job with the financial support. We can't give you visitation. We have to investigate you. She wasn't even saying I was a bad dad. She was saying I was a good dad. She was just saying she doesn't want to deal with me. And then I realized, oh, I care less whether I talk to her ever again. I just want to be an involved father. And we live 3 blocks away, and I work at night. What's crazy is that I talked to this law firm. It's a father's rights firm, and I did a video on them. And I said, hey, we live 3 blocks away. I work at night. I should have the child during the day when she's at work, and then we switch weekends at least. And they said, oh, you'll probably still get every other weekend. I was like, what? I said, I'm the one available. How is a daycare have more rights than me? And they said, you'll probably still get every other weekend. We need $5,000, which I didn't have. So I was like, click. And there's a famous father's rights, divorce lawyers for men law group. And they didn't even want to even try. So I go to court, get 0 visitation. And in Washington, when you go in front of a family court commissioner, you can do a thing called revision, where you go up to a full-time judge and ask them to look at it. It's like a mini appeal. And I found out about it like on day 9, you have 10 days to file. So I file that. I go in front of a judge. She gets a lawyer and gets it continued. And then we go back to court. That judge gives me 5 days a week visitation. And it was because of my time off. And she said, you're allowed a great deal of visitation. This is not a pet or a goldfish, Mr. Christensen. You won't be able to handle her, 8 hours. So I'll give you 4 hours. She go to daycare 4 hours, and you have 4 hours. And I was like, wait a minute. I'm at work 8 hours. If I have the kid 8 hours during the day when the mom's at work, I still got 8 hours of R&R, and I could recover and rest. She goes to work and has a kid 16 hours. She's exhausted, and I can only handle 4 hours. So anyway, I got 4 hours Monday through Thursday because she worked 4 10s, and then I got 8 hours on Saturday. And then the mother started violating the order. So I did a contempt motion, got her found in contempt. And all this pounding away and me getting on the offensive when she was first slapping me around and thought she was going to destroy me was wearing down on her. And most of the family court stuff, and even in criminal court, people get scared into copping a plea. 95% of court cases settle out of court. And whoever has the most leverage or is coming down on the other person harder, usually the other side surrenders. So one day out of the blue, when my daughter was 7 months old, her attorney calls and says she wants to propose you have custody. And so I almost fainted and cried at the same time, but I agreed to it. And then that took a month because I went to his office. He said, sign here. And I said, where's her signature? And he was like, well, I'll get it later. I said, I'm not signing anything unless I see her signature on it. And then he's making a big show in his law office, and the secretary's there. And later on, she came back and wrote a declaration saying I got violent at the law office. And I was letting her hold my daughter while we went in the conference room. So anyway, so I finally got it finalized, and they physically handed the child over to me because the mom's mom and sister, the controlling one, wanted to move to California, and they knew. And throughout the process, I said, well, I found out the mother might move. She's moving, I'm moving. So they knew I was going to be around in their lives, and they hated me so much, they were willing to cut off our daughter. And plus the mom was getting beat down and losing it at every turn and spending $15,000 on an attorney to lose to this warehouse worker who flunked out of college at the time. So I got full custody of her, and I've been raising her ever since. The mom was in and out. Mostly there's periods of time where we didn't hear from her for 2, 5, and 7 years, not at all. And so I had to dealing with my daughter. My daughter's biracial, so she missed out on the culture of her mom. She's a girl. I was there for her when her cycle came, when she graduated from high school, all these things her mom missed. And what pisses me off is we have this entire culture that says dads can't do it. We have movies like Michael Keaton's Mr. Mom in the 80s, I think it was. And then you just watch Homer Simpson and Al Bundy on Love and Marriage. You just see we're just a bunch of doofuses. And even if you watch, somebody pointed this out to me, I said, no way. They said, even if you watch the Cosby Show, Bill Cosby will kind of cower, and like when Claire Huxtable puts her foot down, like this is the way it's going to be. Even in times of controversy, there's even these subtle images of the women take control and they're the smarter ones. Mm-hmm. And so here I am, along with two other million single custodial dads that we have in the country. It's like we're outnumbered 10-1, but we could do just as well as the mothers. Nobody comes out of the womb knowing how to be a parent. You learn as you go. So that's the short of my story. And with my involvement with Dads of America, and then I got involved in a couple other fathers' rights groups, I eventually just created my own father advocacy business where I've been helping people full time since about 2008. So
yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah. So I do work with mothers also, because for me it's about the kids, and there are some bums out there, but there's just as many bad moms as there are bad dads. It's just like the human experience. There's not, the average person is a decent person and wants to be a devoted parent. Some more devoted than others, but the average person is a decent human person from our normal standards. There's really only a small percentage of bums and violent people and child abusers out there. But the most common child abuse that I think exists is when a mom withholds a child from a dad, and for no good reason other than control or vindictive vendetta or to get welfare or child support or whatever. That's the vastly greatest, most common child abuse out there. And nobody talks about it. Nobody even knows it really exists.
No, in fact, there's an actual TikTok out there. I was actually just went and looked up that I posted on my Facebook page, and I'm going to actually try to insert this into this video. But it's basically a woman explaining how she dupes a guy into getting pregnant so she doesn't have to do anything. And I wish I could like screen share. I don't even know if that's, can I do that?
She lives off the state, and
it would be awesome if I could screen share this. Let's see here. And we're all learning, so let's learn together. Let's see if we can do this.
James, I agree with what you're saying about, the greatest abuse is the withhold. I mean, because obviously children do need both of their parents. They do, men and women do give kids unique things, but it doesn't mean that a father can't give what a mother can give.
Well, here's the thing, is that there's the science out there, and all the data shows when the father's not in the home full time, kids are exponentially more at risk for end up in jail, on drugs, alcohol, abuse, suicide, depression, all that other stuff, because they need the structure of the family, and usually the families are gone. Usually the dads are the one that are gone. But there's also the thing that men can give that women can't, is that male affirmation and confidence to be who you can be in life and stuff. Like women give the nurturing, but men protect, and they give the male. You see, like I saw Brett Favre's Hall of Fame speech. He cried saying he hopes his dad is proud of him. How does a 50-year-old grown man cry over whether his dad is proud of him? Because he never got that when he was a kid, and we yearn for that. And it's an identity thing. And if you think your dad is the biggest, baddest dude on the planet, he said you can do anything you want in life and you can make it, screw what everybody else says, that will stick to you more than the peer pressure of the kids who make fun of you and all that other stuff. That can set your identity and your character for life.
I completely agree with that, because as embarrassing as it might be to admit, I'm 55 and I went through a relationship recently where I was doing some sabotage things to myself based on childhood issues that I had. And then I realized, you're not going to get what you're looking for from this person, because it's not even from the person you're trying to get it.
Right.
It's something that is like been built in me and it took my entire life to realize that my identity was built in with this thing of wanting my partner's acceptance, when in fact, really, that was just because I needed my parents. And that goes deeper, but that's really what you're explaining. If a parent withholds the other parent, it's literally like withholding the support and the gifts that parent brings to the child, and then they're empty in that area when they get older. Yeah. That is abuse right there.
All right, so hold on. Check this out. This is on TikTok. I've shared my screen.
being pregnant, eating for two, and then I am sealed. See, his fate is sealed because now I have the wedding. Yeah. Well, I have the ring, then I also have the kid, and then I can be lazy and fat and just sit around, and I don't have to serve my husband's needs. And then if I want to leave, I can. He's going to pay me half, and I'm going to keep the kid, and I'm going to tell him when he can see his.
Literally a thing.
Mhm.
And I think I recognize that lady because I watch a lot of things like Andrew Tate, Kevin Samuels, and some other people, and you see, and when you on TikTok, then they start gravitating. The algorithm starts showing you some of it. I think that lady is bashing women, and she's saying this is what women can do.
Correct.
There's actually a backlash among women against those type of women nowadays because they're sick of dudes not wanting to get married and stuff like that anymore too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one other thing I want to add on to what we were saying, just think about it. Outside of food, then this is what I talk about in some of my how-to videos and stuff I have on YouTube and Instagram stuff. I'll tell people, think about it. We're supposed to do what's in the best interest of the child, or the court is when they make a ruling. What's the best interest of the child? Like you said, William, both parents being involved. But think about it. Outside of food, water, and air, you can't name anything else that a kid needs more than both parents. And what comes with that is security, love, stability, and consistency, and all this. Like, we talk in movies and in speeches about love is the most important thing, but the courts do what's in the interest of the courts getting their bonus money for ordering child support, which is usually the man makes more money, and just shuffling people through, making the lawyers money, referring the people to mediation and to all these evaluations and evaluators that come back to court, and they either ignore or they're just saying the same thing the parents already said, and they're just enriching the system. Have you ever seen that documentary Divorce Corp on YouTube?
No.
Okay. If you type in Divorce Corp, CORP, they have like 4 or 5 great 2-minute trailers. You don't even have to watch the whole movie, but it's the best documentary that's been done on the system. And they have one that talks about what you talk about. There's lawyers and judges admitting that a lawyer will tell a client to lie about the father being abusive, so you get leverage in the case and get a leg up. And they got this set up where if a woman even says she's scared, we got to grant a restraining order just in case. But if a guy's really going to beat the snot out of her and risk a felony assault for 10 years in prison, he doesn't care about a piece of paper. So it's all a scam. It's just the good guys will obey the restraining order so they don't go to jail.
Right.
But outside of food, water, and air, there's nothing more important than both parents. So if you have a wound and you break open that wound, you don't sew half of the wound and let the other part flat. You sew it up. Now you're going to have a scar, and it's not going to be the same as the original, but it's going to be better than if it's separated. So why isn't there a presumption of 50-50 all the time unless there's a criminal case of abuse? That's what it should be.
Right.
But that's never going to happen. They have some 50-50 laws out there, but the judge still has the powers to start there, and then he could turn around unless there's abuse or whatever and just have an excuse to not do 50-50. But the science, the data, and everything says it's the best interest of the child to have both parents. Even when you're married and together, psychologists say spend quality time with your kids. Don't just be watching Monday Night Football, Thursday Night Football, college Saturday, and pros on a Sunday. Spend time with your kids. If you have to do that in an intact family, when kids are traumatized by a divorce or a broken family, how much more do they need as much of both families? And this is the crazy thing they say. Well, the children need one stable home for their own stability. Well, first of all, the family's already broken. So there's already trauma to the kids. So what you're saying is the kids need these 4 walls of this building to heal from the trauma. No, they need the people, the persons, the structure of the family. There's women out there living with 4 kids in a 1-bedroom or a studio apartment that we don't have a problem with because she's a strong single mom. See, everything they're doing is the culture of the people in the system. We're brainwashed to think women are great custodial parents, men are bums, just let them provide, and then that's how it should be set up.
That's them back to the 1940s when the first official child custody case was ever looked at by the courts. And at that time, the men were making the money, the women were stay-at-home moms, and the men were leaving the wives and the children and were not offering financial support. And the women had nothing to fall back on. So the courts decided to judge on the female and protecting the kids and the wife. And at that time, that was a smart thing to do. But fast forward today, we're into equal rights.
Yeah.
My wife should make the same money as I do, doing the same job, and yet I'm still obligated to take 30, 40, 50% of my pay and pay her, even though she's supposed to be equally, an equal.
Yeah. Well, the thing that's a scam about that is if you think about, okay, like in Washington in the RCW, in the law, it says the things the court is supposed to consider: the best interest of the child, the bond between the parents, who's performing the parenting functions, and then also financial support, or who's supporting the schooling and all this other stuff. If financial support is part of being parenting and you're incapable of doing it on your own, why don't they just give custody of the dad where the finances are?
Correct.
Yeah.
Nobody ever talks about that.
I got a
So-
question for you. Let's imagine for a minute there's someone out there who's listening to our stories and is about to maybe go into the court system for custody. What kind of advice do you have for men about their empowerment through it? Because for me, I could see how I disempowered myself by not getting representation. What would be your suggestion to a man that's about to go through this?
First of all, unbrainwash yourself from thinking you're a second-class parent. That's what we walk into court thinking. Like, I talk to guys who say, we separated, my baby's mom or my ex-wife will only let me see the kids for 4 hours on Saturday. And I'll say, okay, when it's 6 o'clock, why don't you just keep the kid? And he says, well, can I do that? Well, can I go to jail or the cops get called? I said, if you're withholding the child against her will and it's a crime, why don't you call the cops on her when she keeps the child Sunday through Friday or Sunday through Saturday? And it doesn't register. If you have a car in both of your names, you drive off and she gets mad at you and reports it stolen, what are you going to say? It's my car. So we think that we know how to deal with our property and all this other stuff and our rights. And, you can't come in my home without a warrant. When it comes to our kids, we're brainwashed to think that we have to surrender. Unbrainwash yourself from that. And then also in any court case, like I actually went in going for 50-50. And the more the mother revealed how bad she was, then I changed it to full custody. I worked with at least 300 guys who got full custody without a lawyer. So what I did and what they did actually works. And what they did and I did, we got on the offensive. We went to war, because being on the defensive, being nice, just empowers the bully. Like, think about a bully at school. They take your lunch money and you give them $2 instead of $1. That's not going to make them go away. That's going to empower them to bully and punk you even more, because now they're drooling like, oh, this guy's easy. But if you stand up to the bully, they might tuck their tail and run because they're used to controlling you. Or if you might actually have to fight. But they're not going to want to fight you every day for something they're easily used to getting to. But like I said earlier, most of this is a war of attrition, and getting on the offensive. What usually guys get emotionally and psychologically beat down by the court system, by what they're saying about. I mean, you said you got blindsided in the beginning. I actually didn't even want to go out and check my mail and read another document or affidavit saying what a horrible human I was. It's psychological. There's psychological warfare that goes on. But the only way to deal with the war, and war is hell, is to get on the offensive. Think about Vietnam or Iraq, where it's a quagmire. We're all just sitting there and nobody's getting anywhere. And then somebody pulls out eventually because this isn't getting anywhere. You have to get on the offensive and call a spade a spade. But the problem, this is why I never would get a lawyer. The lawyers say, we don't talk bad about the mother, that'll look bad. Who does that? Does a prosecutor not talk bad about a pedophile they're prosecuting? They say this is a vicious, violent. They would say, oh, this person violates the bubble of a child. They say, no, they're vicious, sick, twisted, whatever. And so getting on the offensive, I'll tell you this just real quick, 1 minute. This mother was taunting this guy saying, you'll never see your kid again. We're gonna get divorced. I'll get the kids, the house, and all this other stuff. She actually trashed his apartment. I think they were separate. He was working with me. We got paperwork like this thick. We did discovery, interrogatories, petition to start the case, and all this stuff. Bombed her with paperwork, and she started crying and boo-hooing like, how can you do this to me? I can't believe it. And that's what narcissists usually do. Like, they'll treat you like crap, but if you retaliate, they can't believe you have the audacity to do that, because they're such egomaniacs. And in 1 week, they settled on 50-50. Because she was talking smack like she was going to destroy his life, but he got on the offensive and she surrendered and he stood up to the bully. And with a lot of women, they poke and prod and test you. And if you give into their test, they're like, oh, I could just totally punk and control this guy. And they drool at that. If a guy stands up to them, then she starts to respect him. That's why sometimes they'd rather be with a bad boy, because they know even though he beats me up, nobody else is going to beat me up, and he'll protect me. But he stands up to me and I can respect that, because naturally they want a leader or somebody who's going to protect. I mean, if somebody breaks into the house, we don't hide behind the wife. Everybody hides behind the husband. There is a protector and a leader part that comes with being a man, and women naturally fit into that when there's a leadership role. But if they buck the leader a little bit and then he seems soft or he gives in and withers, then they disrespect him even more. And I think, why don't you just not start any drama? We just get along. They just a lot of them just can't do that. So
All right, James. Hey,
but get on the offensive.
I gotta say my safe word. Fair enough.
Okay.
We got 1 minute 28 seconds, and I've got to. It will literally shut me down. I want you to plug your site, if you will. And William, I'd like to give you that opportunity also. Okay,
my website is howigotcustody.com. If you use the hashtag #HowIGotCustody on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube, you'll find me there. My most thorough videos, free how-to videos are on YouTube.
Nice. Yeah, I don't currently have any type of podcast besides being a guest.
I know, we're working on you. It's
Yeah.
all right. And then this is the Go To Charles podcast, and we have less than a minute. I do appreciate it. James, if you want to come on ever again, hit me up. If you like the dialogue and you see the video that I put out, please come back. I really would appreciate that. We've been following each other for a long time, and this has been a great dialogue. I really appreciate your time, and peace out. Subscribe and like.
Thank you, sir.